when I was about 10, I was reading National Geographic Kids magazines, and it kind of had some like tips, planet saving tips, like turn off the taps, while you clean your teeth, and turn off the lights, etc. And I really took that, like, I took it too seriously, because I was really stressed out by what I was reading. I ended up developing obsessive compulsive disorder because I was so stressed out, and I essentially every night I would go around the house and check that all the taps were turned off and all the lights were turned off. And eventually I ended up having to get counseling for it because it got really bad.
Eco-anxiety has been around for decades, for many, many years, but it was primarily originally only felt by people such as environmentalists, conservationists, climate scientists, people who were particularly knowledgeable about what was happening with environmental destruction. And increasingly, as the population has become more and more and more aware, partly because of activists like Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion, partly because of reporting that has got clearer and stronger about this, and partly as the state of the world has got worse, then we're seeing eco-anxiety now move into the wider population. And particularly strongly in the younger generation, in children and young people, because they are waking up to the state of the world and the speed of the destruction.
So since kind of studying my course, I've, kind of, I guess, matured a bit and realized that it's not a problem with, a lack of science at all. There's more than enough science out there to show how bad things are and what needs to be done. The problem is a political and an economic question. That's the real issue. So that resulted in me kind of having a resurgence of my sort of climate grief again, because I was like, I've worked really hard for this, but maybe it's kind of a bit pointless.
It would be a huge mistake to just think eco-anxiety was just in response to what we see happening environmentally with the destruction and the degradation and the fires and the flooding. What creates eco-anxiety is the failure of adults to take action on this, the failure of governments, the failure of oil companies, the failure of those people with the power to do something about this. And that creates a disbelief and a powerlessness and a despair and an impotence and helplessness. And it's that's creating the most psychological distress.
There is a kind of social taboo about climate change that it's very often very difficult to talk about it with friends and family, because you worry, are they going to think I'm crazy for being worried? And also, I think that people are often struggle to talk about it because it's such a big thing, isn't it? And we are fundamentally, I think most of us are actually very frightened about it, even though we may not put it into words very much, or even kind of, sometimes it's not easy to acknowledge that. But I think that under the surface, many of us are very frightened, and we don't, often human beings don't talk about things that they're frightened of because we fear it's going to be overwhelming or it will make us feel worse. So I provide spaces where people can come to share feelings, to talk together about what's happening, and to get that kind of emotional support.
The denial is an understandable defense against unbearable feelings. And the unbearable feelings that adults will be having are guilt and grief and shame. But I can teach you how to navigate it. So you then use those feelings to help you develop the wisdom that we need, the emotional intelligence, the emotional resilience that we need, because we're going to need it as the world changes.
I am a student in University of Birmingham. I study geography, and also on the side, I have an Instagram page where I like to try and raise awareness about eco-friendly issues, veganism, travels. I mean, I'm a little bit scared because the earth is like dying quickly, like it's being destroyed very quickly. But also I know I'm trying to do my part, and I know I don't want to give myself too much of a hard time, because that's just going to affect my mental health.
So I'm part of a group called Scientist Rebellion. Our sort of goal is to get scientists to engage in non-violent direct action, so non-violent civil disobedience, because, you know, scientists are the best place to, or among the best place to understand this crisis. And if they're not, you know, acting like it's an emergency, then why should the public believe them?
The general public has been kept in the dark about the extent of the climate and biodiversity crisis. We are trapped in a system where we are overworked so that those in the developing world can overconsume. But how can we be expected to see this vicious cycle without being given the time or education to see through the cracks?
That's been definitely the most helpful thing, you know, taking the action, but also through taking that action, meeting other people who really, really care and really understand, you know, what is going on.
You know, there's a certain amount of climate change and temperature rises and damage that is already, that is not happening yet, but will happen because it's baked in. And so we are going to need to be socially very resilient to deal with that. And again, that's where my hope sits, is in our capacity to do that.
Everyone knows this is what we should do. Oh my God, we're in a crisis, but no one's talking about how it's affecting us mentally. So a lot of people do get overwhelmed and they give themselves a hard time and saying that, oh, we can't do anything. I think the first thing is, even a small step that you take is a big win.
I do have some hope, and I think that's important for, you know, motivating to act, because it's the right thing to do. You know, and I want to look back in 10 years or 20 years and think I did absolutely everything that I could, you know, and I didn't just sit down in despair.
The solution psychologically is to not attach yourself to being hopeful or hopeless. Both of those are an attempt to escape from the reality which is in the middle, which is uncertain and makes us vulnerable. But that's the place where we can have what we call radical hope. So otherwise it's naive hope or it's hopelessness. But radical hope in the center of those two says, no, we may be going off a cliff, but I'm going down fighting.